Good evening and welcome to the May 25th meeting of the Town Council. If you kindly rise and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. For announcements, the town office will be closed on Monday, May 29th for the observance of Memorial Day. We want to thank the brave men and women who have courageously made the ultimate sacrifice for our country. Upcoming meetings on June 8th, Thursday, June 8th at 7 p.m. There's a tentative meeting. There might not be an agenda large enough for a meeting, if I understand it correctly. Wednesday, June 21st, from 9 a.m. until 4 p.m. The council will be having their annual retreat and goals session. That meeting will be at Buckley's Great Stakes located at 436 DW Highway. Thursday, June 22nd and Thursday, July 20th are regular meetings, both at 7 p.m. here in the Matthew Thornton Room. Paul?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Come join the Merrimack VFW Post 8641 on Memorial Day, Monday, the 29th. The parade kicks off at 10:30 in the morning at the Rite Aid parking lot. We'll travel down DW Highway to Babuzik Lake Road and end at Last Rest Cemetery. Researchers from Dartmouth College are studying PFAS found in the fish at 6 lakes across southern New Hampshire during the summer of 2023. This project is in collaboration with the New Hampshire DES, and is funded through the U.S. Geological Survey. The goal of the project is to better understand the occurrence of PFAS in these lake ecosystems. The study will take place at Horseshoe Pond in Merrimack, along with 5 other lakes in southern New Hampshire area. If you catch a yellow perch, a smallmouth bass, or a largemouth bass in Horseshoe Pond during the summer of 2023, these fish can be donated for the purpose of the study. More details can be found on the town website at www.merrimacknh.gov. They will be members of the New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services at the boat launch at Horseshoe Pond on Free Fishing Day, which I believe this year is June 3rd. It's Saturday, June 3rd, so there'll be members there as well. So anybody who's fishing, if they catch one of these in the Horseshoe Pond, there'll be members of DES to be able to get there, give them the fish.
But the big fish at Horseshoe Pond you should put back. There's a big one there. It's a record breaker, isn't it?
Oh, is that right?
I always heard stories, I never seen it.
Oh, I had never seen it myself.
It's a myth.
A
Thank
lot
you, Paul.
of fishermen there now. That's the one that comes out at night.
Walks around.
Yes. All righty. Comments from the press and public. If you'd like to address council, you could feel free to step to the mic or the table here. And seeing no one approaching, no recognitions, resignations, or retirements tonight are, okay, our first was an appointment that may be happening later in the agenda. Then we'll move that forward without objection, or
Yep.
hold off on that without objection. There are no public hearings updates from our legislators. Do you have anything? No, and I got nothing. Paul, did you see anything? Town manager report.
Actually, tonight I do not have anything.
And moving right along.
All right, and there's no consent agenda. There's no old businesses. So under new business, the council to issue a proclamation designating June 22nd, 2023 as the longest day to promote efforts of raising funds and awareness for the care and support of those facing Alzheimer's disease. And here this evening, for the 8th year in a row, I believe, is Bob Bergen.
Thank you, members of the Worthy Council. Eight copies of things,
Can we put these anywhere, Bob?
Second,
Can we distribute these and put them anywhere?
I can't hear what you said.
Can we put them anywhere
Yeah,
in our travels? Yep,
They should all be the same.
okay.
I mean, I am 76 right now. But I think-
I guess, Bob, what she's asking is that can we plaster these anywhere in the
Yeah, well,
town?
that's what I'm gonna tell you, Doc. Okay. What I've supplied you with, once everyone has been supplied, you have one of our window posters.
Bob, is your mic on?
It was.
It
Okay,
is
that one's
now.
on, this one's not. Okay. Okay, thank you, Mackenzie. What I've supplied you with is just an informational sheet that we have, what we call it our window banner. And I'd like to ask a favor. You'll see these in different parts of town already, but you are influential people. You can see places that I don't see. Nothing laughing, Finley. Find some place that doesn't have one up and ask them to put it up. If I can get 8 more put up because you 8 do something, that's 8 more people that'll be paying attention. And because you did it, maybe 10 more people will pay attention to it. Yes, this is our 8th year. It's scary that we've hung in there that long, but with the support of many, many, many people of the village of Merrimack, we just keep breaking down barriers and breaking down records. I'm constantly thanked by people who have had someone in their family either early diagnosed with Alzheimer's or has recently buried them. It's a combination of many things. I'll be working a breakfast tomorrow morning for a woman who was 50 years working for Our Lady of Mercy, and she just passed away. It's a difficult disease. We know that. There are new medicines, there are new theories, there are a lot of things. But the longest day started in 2015 with the idea of individual communities creating an awareness, an advocacy, and possibly a little bit of hope in each individual community. Everybody does something different. On June 3rd, I will be helping with the longest 30-day bike ride from Hampton to Exeter to Rye, and I'll be one of the people at the Exeter spot. And that's a project that I wouldn't even want to try to run. But when people find out who I am, they go, how does Merrimack do that every year? I said, a lot of people, a lot of my council gets behind me, my town manager gets behind me, the governor gets behind us. And every year we have new sponsors, every year we have new people stepping up. And I'm very pleased to say something today. Today was the last pickup. I haven't got everything delivered yet, but the condiments were an issue. And today I received 5,000 individual packages from Thirsty Moose, 2,000 mustard, 2,000 ketchup, and 1,000 relish. That's with the Michael Timothy's donation, the Planet Fitness donation, the DW Diner donation, Coke, and chips, and I forgot somebody. We will not have to buy anything for the first time, which means that's about a $3,000 savings. So when I say I think we'll break the 15,000, now I know we will break the 15,000 because when you don't have to spend time chasing things, it's a lot smoother. And the donation this year from DW Diner was absolutely stunning. They are going to buy all of our 2,600 hot dogs, 2,700 rolls. And on top of that, Karen and her crazy staff are going to serve bread pudding at the Alzheimer's event because she yelled at me because we don't have a dessert. And I said, we're men. We're not. We did cupcakes one year. It was a disaster. But this year, I'm very grateful to the people at DW Diner for what they're doing. I'm grateful to the new sponsors, the new exhibitors. I'm grateful to Rotary Club for what they have done just in the past 3 weeks. So there's a lot of people stepping up, but there's still a lot of people that, for our community, I get emails or questions, or somebody saw a banner and said, my husband's been recently diagnosed with Alzheimer's. Where do I turn? And recently we had the state director on Merrimack TV, and she said, is that the lady I should ask? I said, yes, because I don't have answers, but that lady does. And she comes to our town every year. She does a library program. She does a Merrimack TV program. Melissa Grenier likes coming to our community because she knows she's not wasting her time. So I'm very pleased with that. In your packet is the new venue. It's crazy, but just as crazy as 8 years ago when we started cooking hot dogs. It's called Puzzles for a Cause. This is the idea of Sylvia White, who's a member of my team. And she said, why couldn't we start selling used jigsaw puzzles? Jigsaw puzzles are a great therapy for everybody at any age and anything else. But she really got serious with it. And she started getting a few of her girlfriends together, and they started creating an environment for which last fall at the KSC Christmas Craft Fair, she sold all the puzzles that she had, like 130. Since then, she's been collecting puzzles. Today I went out, and I kid you not, I have a Forester Subaru, and I couldn't have put any more puzzles in that car than I did. I picked up puzzles at Amherst Triangle Credit Union. I picked up puzzles at the Merrimack Triangle Credit Union. I picked up puzzles at the Our Lady of Mercy office. And as I'm getting the last boxes in, I go, this is insane, because I only have to pick them up. But at that event, you're going to have an opportunity to not only walk around and talk with exhibitors and talk with people who are very sincerely interested in the effects of Alzheimer's, but this is history. Some of these puzzles are 10, 15 years old. Some of them are brand new. So her idea is a great one. It's going to be a whole new venue. We have 11 different exhibitors from the town. Merrimack Public Library this year is going to exhibit. We have the three originals, which are Edward Jones, Lewis's Towing, and Fimbledore, plus a few other new companies. So it'll be kind of interesting. There'll be something to do. I'm hoping that we can control everything well. I have a very good team of people. You're the designated hitter. I put you wherever I could. Tom has done everything. Nancy, you're only a cashier. So,
Apparently, they
But-
can't trust you with money.
No. Tom can do money. Tom can wrap hot dogs. Tom can do the main, but he's done just about every job that I've asked him to do. So, and I'm always looking for good people. When you have the nucleus that we have, when I have Paul, I can pick up the phone and say, hey, I got this situation. No, it's not a situation. This is the solution. And every single time I've given you a problem, you give me the solution, and it's done. And last year, we started with the drive-through on Bishop Street. They raised over $2,000 on a brand new idea. It wasn't my idea, it was somebody else's, but it was a whole new idea. I'm grateful for that. As our numbers jumped from 5,000 to 13, it all because a lot of people contributed their thoughts. And for a lot of us, it was just a matter of figuring out how to make it work. So I'm very, very grateful. I'm done talking. Anybody has any questions about this year?
You do a wonderful job. You and the crew, it's always impressed me, and every year it's more and more impressive. So I surely appreciate all those efforts.
The thank you notes I get are very rewarding when I think about it.
Sure.
And that people walk up and they are grateful. And people that maybe they're not from Merrimack, but they are just looking around going, all day.
Yeah.
And I'm grateful. It's very important. So,
Well, very good.
and if you don't want to eat hot dogs, there's going to be the D.W. Dimer's famous bread pudding.
Start with dessert.
If that's going to give you a reason to come,
All right.
Okay. Thank you, Bob, for all you do.
yep.
Any further comments or questions? I'm going to, we have a proclamation here that I'll read into our record. The Town of Merrimack Town Council Proclamation, National Alzheimer's Longest Day, the longest day in Merrimack, New Hampshire, June 22nd, 2023. Whereas Alzheimer's disease, a progressive degenerative brain disease, and the most common form of dementia that tragically robs individuals of their memories and leads to progressive mental and physical impairments, and whereas there are no known treatments to prevent, cure, or even delay the onset or slow the progression of Alzheimer's disease. Whereas 1 in 3 seniors dies with Alzheimer's or another dementia, it kills more than breast cancer and prostate cancer combined. And whereas worldwide 55 million people are living with dementia, and whereas in 2023, Alzheimer's and other dementias will cost the nation $345 billion. And whereas by 2050, these costs could rise to nearly $1 trillion. And whereas more than 6 million Americans are living with Alzheimer's, and whereas 12.7 million people aged 65 and older are projected to have Alzheimer's dementia by 2050, and whereas with early detection and diagnosis, individuals and their families can gain access to medications and management strategies that may temporarily improve symptoms, and whereas there is a need to raise awareness about Alzheimer's disease and to honor all of the caregivers who support and care for loved ones with the disease, now therefore be it resolved that we, the Town Council of the Town of Merrimack, hereby proclaim June 22nd, 2023 as the longest day in Merrimack and stand in support of the 8th Annual New Hampshire Hot Dogs Stand fundraising event taking place on June 22nd in the Our Lady of Mercy Church parking lot, dated this 25th day of May, 2023.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bob.
One thing I didn't mention,
Um,
we have crossed $50,000 in 7 years.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing.
Nice.
Would somebody like
What's
to
your
make a motion?
record so far?
Huh?
Finish it.
I'm looking for a motion on the
Move
proclamation.
to approve the proclamation.
Second.
Motion by Tom Koenig, seconded by Barbara. Any further discussion on the motion? Not, I'll call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed or abstained, it's 700. Nancy?
I had a quick question. What's your record so far? Was it 15,000 last year?
Last year, we did 13,250.
Okay.
This year, I set the goal at 15,000, and that was before I knew I wasn't going to have to buy anything.
Yeah, so you're 3,000 ahead already.
Oh, yes, yeah, and
'Cause you don't have to pay
what's
out.
interesting is how many people at the office knew we were the team that's crossed 50,000 as an individual team. We're only the second team in New England to do that. Most don't go on to 7 or 8 years, but if we keep going, maybe we'll get to 10 years. But each year surprises me. Each year I feel a little better about doing it. And it's just amazing when I go home and I got envelopes with $100 or $50 or $200, and everybody that wants to do something is doing something.
Well, it's
And it-
become a community event.
Hmm?
It's become a community event.
Oh, it is clearly,
Right.
it has always
Which
been
helps.
a community event.
Right.
It's just, it took a little time. I mean, I'm not going to embarrass you, Tom, but a couple of years ago, you sat in the chair seat and talked about your dad. And a lot of
mom.
people don't know the individuals.
Yeah.
Nancy has her dad and her mom. That's what we are all touched by someone, because this disease doesn't have any boundaries.
None.
But we have done it as a community. And when I talk to other people in other towns, they're just blown away by our numbers. And I go, they're not my numbers. This is not my event. This is Merrimack Community's event. And that's what makes it, that's why I'm asking you to take the flyer and find some place that you know them and, and I haven't got everybody in town as a sponsor. I haven't brought everybody out, just a lot of the good ones. But it's been a good ride. So,
Thank you again.
Thank you again, absolutely.
good. Thank you. I'll turn the mic on.
Wonderful.
All right, well done.
All right, yep, absolutely. We'll be seeing you on the 22nd.
I'll see you this week.
Item number 2 under new business, the council to consider a request to use the perimeter of the capped landfill site, otherwise known as a winter dump, at the Merrimack Transfer Station for use as a honeybee apiary. And here this evening is Rick Cagney to speak to us about it.
Got the most complicated part figured out. I appreciate you all letting me sit in front of you today to kind of review this proposal.
Is the light
those-
on? Right.
The light is on.
All right, bring it close to you a little bit more.
How's that?
A little more.
How's that? Perfect. All right, perfect.
Oh, there you go.
All right.
Okay.
For those that don't know me, my name is Rick Gagney. I'm a 45-year resident of the town of Merrimack. Born and raised here, raising my kids here, very invested in the community, and I've been very fortunate to kind of live and grow up here. I started beekeeping about 4 years ago. It started as just a single hive in my backyard. Quickly grew out of control. Like any other thing I do, I kind of jump in with both feet, and it's just absolutely fascinating seeing what these little bees are capable of doing and how fast they can expand with the right management. We currently went from one hive 4 years ago. We have 16. And at the rate this week is going, it's going out of control. We've been grabbing swarms up in a whole bunch of different places and getting a lot of phone calls from different people. So that's been pretty exciting. Fortunately, we've had some really good relationships with some of the people in town. All of our hives are located on private property right now. So we've had numerous residents that have reached out to us and said, I'd love to host some hives on our property. So we've gone and we've set up an electric fence on their property, maintained a small area, and set up anywhere from 3 to 6 hives in somebody's yard. So that's been really good, but it becomes, the more consolidated you are, the more efficient everything is, and it just becomes easier to manage. When there's a lot of driving and stuff, it starts to get a little bit more spread out. You get over to one apiary and you're like, oh, I need this. and you got to zip all the way back home to get it and stuff. So there's a lot of equipment involved in the sense that it all gets stored at my place, and then it has to get ferried back and forth depending on what the bees are doing. So as far as credentials go, I'm a member of multiple clubs in the state, everywhere from the Seacoast out to the Monadnock region, up to the White Mountains. And one of the things that I really enjoy doing, and that I'm really proud of, is mentoring new beekeepers getting into it. There's a lot to learn about it. There's a very small window of time for you to be successful in managing bees and having that colony be able to grow and successfully make it through the winter. And there's a lot of opportunities to make mistakes. So by me helping some of those people, hopefully I can shorten that learning curve for people, show them some of the tricks of the trade, and again, make them successful and make the colonies successful. And that's something I really enjoy doing. So super invested in the community as far as beekeeping goes across the state. One of the proposal that you have in front of you, did you all get a copy of it? Okay, perfect. So the proposal is to kind of take the winter dump, as you call it, something that we created many years ago and is now capped over, and find a positive use for that same property. What I would like to do, with your permission and the direction, with some assistance from the director of the landfill, is to be able to go up and use the property to host a handful of hives similar to what I do on private property, and get the positive, basically the positive impacts of having honeybee population increase in that area. Helps the neighborhoods, helps the all the flowering, all the pollination, which is really critical for this area. Feral honeybees are not very prevalent in this area. They just, between our winters and some of the mite issues, you don't see a lot of natural hives, that tree cavities and stuff that can kind of host those honeybees for the longevity. So beekeeping is a huge benefit to the communities, and it's becoming very popular as well. So with this proposal, we would end up providing, my wife and I would end up providing an electric fence. Anytime we set up an apiary, we have to put up an electric fence. There's a lot of critters, that between bears, raccoons, everything else, that want to get into the hives. So we use the electric fence. It's a solar fence, so it doesn't require any power or anything like that it doesn't supply on its own. So that'll end up surrounding the perimeter of the apiary, and then everything that happens within that electric fence would contain all of the hives and the hive stands. One of the discussions I had with Mr. McCallie was the town's requirements of mowing the property twice a year. We have absolutely no issue bringing our mower with us to at least do the immediate vicinity around the hives, so people can stay a little bit away. But just to kind of reinforce how domesticated, is a poor word, but how docile honeybees are, is I have 6 hives in my property. That's why we included some of those pictures in your packet. I'm in a very tight neighborhood. I keep bees. My neighbor 2 houses down keeps bees, and we've had 0 issues between the pools and everything else. We've had 0 interactions with any of our neighbors that have been negative. Most of our feedback from them has been very positive, and the next thing you know, they're putting on a suit and coming over, and so they can kind of see how it all works, which is pretty cool. And I always warn them, don't get into it. It's very expensive and it's very addictive. But yeah, so as far as maintaining around the hives, we absolutely understand that that's something that not everybody's interested in bees. Not everybody wants to be in really close proximity to the bees. So we can, again, we'll work with the director to figure out when those mowing timeframes are, make sure it's cut back. I'm not using industrial mowers and stuff, so we'll probably be keeping it up a little bit more than what normally they do, because we're going to be using string trimmers and regular mowers and stuff. One of the other things that we need to do is have drivable access to where the apiary would be. When we initially set it up, everything is very light. When the colony starts to grow, they start packing away honey and stuff, things become very heavy very quick. So having that apiary relatively close to where that gate access is, unfortunately, there's no way I can get around that. If I try to explain to my wife that we have to hoof the boxes to the other end of the landfill, she's gonna look at me and go, yeah, that's, you're on your own, buddy. So, but having drivable access, so again, I'll work with the director to kind of figure out appropriate areas that also are not gonna interfere with their daily activities and stuff that they need to do to kind of maintain the property as well. As far as the inspections go, my wife and I do weekly inspections of all of our hives. And this allows us to kind of track the progress of the colonies, make sure that the health of the colony is there. Lets us stay ahead of any issues, whether the colony is growing too fast, we can give them more room, or if we need to manage any type of mite issue or anything like that, so they remain healthy. So we'll be doing those weekly inspections. And those inspections can happen during the business hours of the landfill. So we can work with the director up there to have access during the business hours, and then moving hives and stuff. Typically we do at night, which the dump isn't open, but there's ways we can get around that. If we have to move hives, we can move them on rainy days when everybody's in the hive and everything's kind of locked up, and we can move them in those conditions versus nighttime conditions, what we typically do. So again, working with him, we can kind of address some of the issues that may pop up, evaluate the property and figure out what's appropriate, where it is. We try to get some level land, but all of our hives are secure on the ground, or all the hives are up on hive stands, which gets them up about 16 inches. We make sure those are super stable, and then everything gets ratchet strapped down. So if there's wind and stuff like that, it's not an issue, but they get pretty heavy, so they don't typically go anywhere. But other than that, I'm here to basically answer your questions, put your minds at ease, and then go from there. So,
Thank you, Rick.
yeah.
Nancy?
Just to let you know that Rick had initially contacted me about the possibility. And I said, well, actually, you need to talk to Paul because we need to find out, is there a reason why we couldn't do it? I mean, that was my first thing. Are we restricted related to allowing him to do it? Would it involve anything that would disturb the surface? So I'm assuming that you looked into that, Paul?
Yeah, basically what Rick said is that everything's above ground. He's not digging into, the only thing he's digging in the dirt is the electronic fence, really.
So there's nothing that we need to consider not doing it.
We'd have to talk about insurance and stuff like that
Okay.
with him.
But in terms of
In terms of
the
the
actual,
surface, no, because we cannot
Site.
penetrate the cap.
right,
Like on our other properties, we can't penetrate the cap, and this wouldn't be penetrating the cap. And there's areas where, if he can work out, he wouldn't even be on the landfill, so to speak. He could be off into the woods a little bit more.
now have you spoken to the director of the landfill? Who's that? Who's in charge of
The foreman of the landfill is Chris,
that? Okay,
and Don Tuamela is the DPW.
Okay.
So
And-
the next step for Rick is to sit down with both of them and try to figure out a spot.
okay,
'Cause there's
so we
also
haven't
other
gotten any
areas.
feedback from them
No,
so far.
no far so far. There's also other areas where Rick could have access on the other side, so to speak, where the bike
Yeah.
park is. The
With
dirt
road
bike park.
There's access on that side.
Yeah, there could be access on that side too.
Yep.
Okay, so you're waiting to talk to them until we decide?
Yeah,
Okay,
Yes.
gotcha. Thank you.
Nancy?
Oh, thank you for the presentation. I just wondered, when you talked about the fencing, the perimeter, how big an area of an area is, will this take up?
Pretty small. So what we do is the electric fence, for example, in my backyard, it houses 6 hives currently, and that's usually the most I have on that site, and it's probably 10 feet by 15 feet at the most. Some of the other apiaries that I have them a little bit longer, so it's probably 10 feet by maybe 20 or 25 feet. And that's more or less just so we have a little bit more working room and stuff. But they're relatively small, and I'm limited by the size of the electric fence that I buy. It's almost like you see it as a chicken wire type netting. So it's not like a 3-strand that you would typically see on a farm. And they sell those only in limited sizes. So we try to keep it a little bit more compact. And if the hives are a little bit closer, it makes it a little bit easier to work. So.
Great, thank you. And one more question, just in terms of the insurance or liability or anything, does the town cover that or does Rick have to cover that?
It'd be Rick. Rick would have to provide it to the town. So that if somebody at the landfill does get stung when they're throwing something away. The one thing is that I would not, I don't want to assume, but what people are throwing away for trash wouldn't be attracting the bees. They'd be more out being worker bees, trying
Yep.
to hit the flowers, hit the,
Like I said, we don't see them in our yard at all. And the garbage cans and stuff are probably within 20 feet of the hives. They have no interest in garbage. They have no interest in anything like that. They're out doing what they do. They're looking for pollination stuff. They're looking for flowers. They're looking for when the pine trees hit and stuff. That's where they are. We use our pool all summer long, and that's within 10 feet of where the hives are. And my daughter absolutely is petrified of bees, and she's gotten comfortable enough that she's using the pool and has no concern of it, to the point where she has little sticks as bee boats so she can occasionally get the one out of the pool that goes in. She hasn't quite gotten to the point where she's willing to put it on her finger, but you know, she's saving them out of the pool when they do good in there. And it's nice too, because that site has kind of surrounding where we throw our leaves and branches and all that stuff. There is some swampy accumulated water and stuff there. So there are water sources on the property as well, which are beneficial, but they'll forage 4 or 5 miles away, depending on what they need. So
Great, thank you.
yeah, well, very welcome.
Barbara?
Yeah, I actually think it's a great idea because we have this property all over town. It's conservation land. And, you know, to be able to do something like this from an ecological standpoint, you know, it's important because not only does it help our farmers that we still have in town with the pollination issues, but also right now honeybees are in dire straits right now because their numbers have so dramatically reduced. So I think it's a great opportunity. Thank you for bringing it up.
And to be perfectly honest with you, this was we go to the dump once a week like everybody else, and I see that up there, and I'm like, man, that would be a great place to do it. But we're also very open to. We don't know all the different limited spaces that the town has and stuff, and if people have a suggestion on something that would be more appropriate, or if when we sit down with the director and he says, this works, but we also have this, and it might be a little easier or maybe better for our guys. We're very open. That's the good thing about bees is they do all the work going to where they need to go. So I just need to give them a nice, safe place.
One thing you might
So-
consider in the future is talking to the Conservation Commission.
Yeah,
Because they've got some really beautiful spots.
we've reached out to them. So hopefully, like I said,
You've
we
got-
try to remain fluid with a lot of this stuff.
You see this person over here?
Yeah. So I did send an email a couple months ago, and unfortunately, it may not have gotten to the right places depending on how I sent it. But yeah, like I said, we're very open to ideas.
probably some
we've
nice
had
spots
some
on
really we've had some really good interactions with some people in town,
Yeah.
and they've been absolutely phenomenal. So
I would encourage you to reach out to Steve Perkins and get on the agenda for the Conservation Commission. He's the chair. And come see the Conservation Commission. I think we have a lot of properties in town that, you know, if it works for you,
Yeah.
it would probably work.
absolutely, thank you.
It's a natural.
Yeah.
All right. Tom?
So a couple of questions. Does that fence you showed in your pictures keeps bears away?
It does. It does. We typically will bait the fence. If we start having an issue or we start having a lot of activity close to the apiary, they recommend baiting the fence. We haven't had to do
What does that mean?
Those fences have a limited charge to them, so they're not designed to necessarily stop a moose or something like that. Bears have such a heavy coat and such a big coat. You're looking to get that snout contact. So you'll see people wrap a piece of bacon around it. So they
get
go
that
up and they get it right on the nose, and then they know. It doesn't matter how big or bad you are. When you get hit on the nose, you know it. And there's quite a few videos of them taking off, and that's enough of a whack to get them.
That's funny.
But like I said, I've been very fortunate, knock on wood, that I haven't had any bear interactions. We've got one that visits our neighborhood all the time, and he's yet to kind of come to our hives. He loves my neighbor's feeders.
Yeah.
It's
I've had 'em in
but
my
yeah,
backyard.
so far we've been very lucky with the hives, but we still do the fences because it's such a big investment
Oh,
in
sure.
equipment really fast, and just you try so hard to get them to be a successful point, and a bear comes in and one interaction, it all gets wiped out
all
really
gone,
fast. So
yeah.
yeah.
So what's the range of the bees in a colony? How far out? do they
So
range?
they'll forage anywhere from 4 to 5 miles, if they need to go that far. Like I said, the bees in my neighborhood, I've got some stuff in my yard. You'll see them going right from the hive right to that stuff, and then you'll see others that are just taking off, and who knows where they're going. From my property on Bon Ave, I'm sure they're crossing the river going into Litchfield, because that's all within their range. And when you look at as the crow flies, that 4 to 5 mile radius can be pretty huge.
That's pretty huge.
I think that's atypical for this area, just because we have so many gardens, we have so many people that have flowers, and there's no real need for them to travel that far. But they're capable of doing that, and it's
Are you looking to try and cover Merrimack or something like that by these different locations, or do you?
to be perfectly honest with you, most of my stuff right now is on the north end of town. I have some hives over on Bedford Road. I have some hives on Joppa Road. My house off of Turkey Hill down on the Amherst end. And again, I'm wherever they land, because they, like I said, they forage in a large area. I would love to find something towards the south end of town, but I've got a pretty good route where I can do a circle and end up back at the house and then start it all over again, because I
careful what
realize
you
I
ask
forget stuff every time.
Okay, so are you selling this honey? Do you?
I
have
am.
a
I do sell the
contract?
honey. It's a byproduct of kind of raising bees, unfortunately.
Unfortunately.
Fortunately or unfortunately, however you look at it, I have
gotta
a
deal
bunch
with
of beekeepers that sell bees, and they're like, I don't know what to do with all this. Like, I don't want to sell it. I can promise you, I have not even come close to breaking even with my investments. Beekeeping is extremely equipment intensive, and to kind of ramp up, it costs a lot of money. A hive itself, to buy a hive, you're looking about $350 to $400 just for the equipment. The fence is about $400. If you order bees, which I haven't had to do in a long time because I'm propagating my own at this point, but bees are $200-300 to get a colony of bees to put into your hives. And then it's like anything else. As they start expanding, you're constantly buying more equipment to try to keep up with them. So in order to, like, that first year when you get into beekeeping, you don't even get to harvest any honey, because you're letting them build up. You're trying to get their supplies up, so they can make it through the winter. So that's our.
And do these hives stay out during the winter? Do you?
Yep, the hives stay out in the winter. We end up doing it's an insulated winter wrap that goes around them. And the only thing that we do is we try to get the hives up to about 70 pounds of honey per hive, so they can make it through the winter months. So, and then we monitor the hives through the winter. So like this last winter where we had those really warm and really cold spells, when we were up and down, the bees were a lot more active than they typically were. So they were consuming their food at a lot faster rate. So we ended up having to do some supplemental feeding midwinter to try to get those colonies all the way through. So in this area, in like the New England area, 40 to 50% loss rate is very common. But like I said, my wife and I are into the bees every week. We track them, we watch them, we test them constantly. And fortunately, we've lost, in the 4 years that we've done it, between all of our hives, we've lost 2 hives. So we're way down into the single digits for a loss rate. One of them was a screw up on our part. When we went to feed them, it didn't get closed up correctly, and some pests got in there. And then the other one, they just didn't have enough of a population. They had an issue in the fall. We requeened. They never built their population up enough, so they just couldn't sustain the winter months in order to make it all the way through. So that one was kind of a planned. We knew it was going to succumb to it, but we were still hopeful, and unfortunately, it didn't happen. So, but we've been very fortunate. So.
And would you be willing to consider a trial period of some sort, or do you need to
Absolutely.
set it and leave it for years at a time?
So it's like anything. I like to have some security in the sense that if we put a bunch of stuff up there, I can't make it. I can make anything disappear in 24 hours. I prefer not to because there's good ways and there's bad ways of managing stuff and there's good ways of managing things. And if something were to come up and we discovered that, hey, this isn't working out, with a notice from the town or a conversation from Paul to say, hey, this isn't working out. We've had some issues. We could have all of the hives off and relocated after a few nights. I don't, like I said, I don't anticipate any issues. I don't see any issues. And if in a few years we're like, hey, we don't like this venture, or we want to try to find another location, or we just want to terminate it, I would just need a little bit of time to make sure I have another location to move the bees to, and that's all. And that's usually not difficult to find. But again, that's just as long as there's good communication going back and forth. I don't anticipate any issues like that.
Okay, thank you.
You're very welcome.
Mackenzie, did you?
And to Tom's point, if the honeybee apiary grows, are you able to keep up and maintain it as well as the cost for it?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Well, that's the good thing. We can stop it and cap it whenever we want. I'm just kind of feeding my addiction at this point with it growing. But again, there's ways of like most backyard beekeepers have their 1 to 2 hives, and they keep it at that. I'm out collecting swarms. That's what I've been doing the last 2 days is collecting swarms that have gotten into people's yards and stuff. So it's easy for us to kind of grow that, but we could easily turn around and be like, nope, 20 is our magic number. We're going to stop at 20, and anything else that happens from there, we're going to split and get rid of those bees or give those bees away and set up other beekeepers in the area to be able to house them. So it's never difficult to get rid of bees and get other people up and running. So, and with the amount of contacts that we have between mentoring, housing bees in other locations is never difficult. So, my wife has already told me that we need to find where the cap is and find it quickly. So, she's gotten into it. She's very into it. She loves helping.
I don't know if you noticed, but she's
the organized one. She's the organized one in the whole venture.
I love the idea. So I guess what we're waiting for then is this meeting with Rick and the staff.
Yeah, if the council would like, I could proceed with the meeting and figuring a location, and then, of course, getting a contract written up between the two parties.
Do you need a vote for tonight to move forward?
Yes, please.
Mackenzie?
So I will make a motion to have our town manager meet with the DPW director and Rick to utilize the perimeter of the cap landfill site at the Merrimack transfer station to use as a honeybee the honeybee apiary.
Could I suggest that we also cover any possibility of, if in the future, for Conservation Commission, would they have to come back for us for that too?
No, actually, we should know. What we'll do is we'd have to try to go back, try to think.
Could we get, if the motion said, and also include any future Conservation Commission agreements, that would cover everything for now.
Yeah, when we did the maple collection, both Conservation Commission and Town Council reviewed that.
Yeah,
So
it would be,
I would agree with your suggestion.
To cover both now?
I think so.
Yeah.
As approved by Conservation Commission, I would
Would
say.
you agree to that,
Yes.
Mackenzie?
And I'm allowed to sign any and
Yeah.
And allow the town manager to sign any and all documentation related to that.
And I still second.
Motion by Mackenzie, seconded by Nancy Murphy. Any further discussion on your motion? Well, let's understand the motion, I guess. Is that,
And that contract would come back to the council before approval. Because we could be opening Pandora's box just by leaving it totally wide open. And we need to be understanding of what we're finally agreeing
all right,
to.
okay.
all right. So for the minute taker, because she's asked this of me several times, we have a motion on the floor to allow Rick and the town to enter into this kind of preliminary discussion for placing his honey hive at the transfer station, as well as if he goes to Merrimack Conservation, they have other areas in town to start the contract discussion and for the town manager to bring back the contract for final approval to the town council.
That's exactly what Mackenzie said.
That's what I heard.
That's what I heard.
Okay, I just wanted to reiterate it because she yelled at me a couple times saying, "Would you please make it clear?"
Not Mackenzie, but the minute, no,
Minute taker,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, with the dagger.
she wouldn't yell at you.
Is- Mackenzie, any further discussion on your motion? Anything further? I see none. I'll call the question. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed or abstained? 700. Thanks, Rick.
Monday, Friday this week, so Tuesday, Saturday next week. Perfect.
And
Thank you very much.
And
So
just to
the
let you
backside
know,
of the contract before,
Rick is
now that
on
you
Facebook.
approved it.
And he talks about a lot of the swarms he saves.
Yeah.
So, he'll get reports of a household or will have this swarm of bees. And instead of calling to kill them, calling a pesticide, they'll come and they'll collect them and take them. So that's really kind of cool too.
It's interesting enough that you say that because honeybees actually become protected under certain things. So JP Pests had gotten called for a swarm that had moved into a building in Amherst, and they absolutely refused to terminate
Oh, excellent.
the hive. They had said, we're
call
not
you.
doing it. Unfortunately, they were contracted by the place, and they were like, we're still not doing it. Reach out to a beekeeper, and then we'll go down that road. If the beekeeper can't successfully do it, and the beekeeper identifies that this is a hazard, then we'll discuss moving forward with it. So again,
great.
it's a tremendous amount of support in all directions, and even JP Pest had said that it's a business kiss of death when someone exterminates a honeybee hive and there's no efforts to try to save them stuff, because everybody's starting to realize the benefits of it and how important it is.
Well, fortunately, you're around as a resource for them. So
it's-
that's
well,
great.
Like I said, it's been pretty fun. So part of the second part of that contract is we do have extra suits.
Yeah.
So anytime somebody wants to come out and take a look at it,
You never
since they're
know,
gonna
we
kind of
might
be town
join you.
bees, you're more than welcome to.
Excellent.
We're gonna have a field trip.
That's
There
right.
you go.
I'm suggesting a cap of about 100.
So I'll fit you for
That's right.
Get your part-time job going, Eddie. Thank you, Rick. We
Thank
appreciate
you,
it.
Rick.
Thanks, Rick.
All right, item number 3 under new business.
You want to go back to the planning board?
Oh, Bob's here. Of course, and Lynn's here as well. I was wondering, what's Lynn doing here? So, yeah, we will move back to our first item would have been appointments, council. Let me see. The planning board shall meet annually per section, Charter Article Section 6,
-6.
-6. That annually there should be a review with the planning board, the council review with the planning board. The agenda item is to highlight the board's significant actions, current projects, anticipated actions, and to raise any concerns the council should know about or could act upon. Hi, Robert.
Hello, Mr. Chairman and members of the council. Let me begin by apologizing for not being here at the earlier part of the agenda when I came up in the order. As you know, I'm a member of the Rotary Club, and the Rotary Club tonight is honoring the high school's top 10 scholars for the year right across the street. So Lynn and I were over watching as much of that as we could. We thought we timed it just right to come over here and catch the agenda, but
You did.
obviously missed,
Perfect.
missed a little bit. But you're missing a great show over there with some great kids talking about where their future's going and their years at high school. And here I am. You're sorry you came in second, where I wanted to be tonight. No, that's not true. So thank you for the opportunity to be here again on behalf of the planning board. I'm happy to say, I think for the second year in a row, all those slots and seats on the planning board are full, including all of the alternate positions. So that's been rare for us in our 10-year of coming here. Usually there's some spaces, and I use this soapbox to encourage people to come out and volunteer. But we've got a full board. We recently held our annual elections, and Paul McLaughlin and I were reelected as the chair and vice chair. And Paul has been a great addition as the vice chair over the past couple of years. I think this is his second or third year elected as the vice chair. I think second. And there's been quite a number of times over the past year where I've had to miss meetings and leave it in his capable hands, and he's been fantastic at it. So certainly want to pat him on the back. Normally, when I see this on my calendar to come visit with you guys, I think ahead a week or two and ask Tim and his team to give me my statistics on how many times we met and what we've seen. And I only gave them a couple of days notice this time, so I'm afraid I don't have the data that I would normally give to you. But we met about 20 times, and typically each one of our agendas would have 3 or 4 different projects from around town that are very often residential apartment buildings, such as the ones approved over in the shopping center where Tractor Supply is, for some workforce housing that's going to be built there. There's obviously a proposal to do some more commercial and residential development over near the Outlet Mall. That sort of changes its name from Slate to Parcel A to Merrimack Premium Outlets to all different things. And I think at the moment it's called Slate. Trying to think if there's other sort of significant, memorable projects that we saw over the course of the year. Probably for the first time in a long time, we actually voted against a proposed commercial development. I don't know if you necessarily are interested in the details, but I can share them if you like.
I'm interested.
The McDonald's over by Exit 11 had proposed redesigning their site to add a second drive-through lane. And it was just sort of the view of the board that was overburdening the site, and there really wasn't any room left for parking and pedestrians if they were able to do that. So it's very rare for the board to actually reach a conclusion where we really can't guide the process and have the applicant make some changes and find a way to move things forward, and it just reaches an end point. But that was one of the occasions that had done so. So that's a little unusual for us to do. Let's see, what else to tell you? Always very thankful for Tim and his staff's support. They do a fantastic job of providing us with information to help support our decisions and attend all of our meetings and provide us live guidance throughout those, which is tremendously valuable. We couldn't do it without them. And as always, I don't want to miss the chance to give them that accolade. I didn't come with any other topics to talk about sidewalks or any other developments in town. I think things are generally proceeding as you'd expect. We think pretty well. We are, as you guys know from your own capital improvement plan, we're very close to initiating the next master plan for Merrimack. The last one was adopted in 2013, and it's intended to be adopted or at least developed every 10 years. So it's we're at the point where it's time to begin doing that. And that's supported from the capital standpoint with a consultant who helps us do that. VHB was the consultant that we used last time. I have no idea who will bid on it or propose to do it with us this year. It will be a bit of a unique master plan because typically the master plan looks at undeveloped large parcels and does some projections for where you reach full build out and that sort of thing. And the last time it was done, there was a limited number of big parcels left. And I'd be surprised if we have any left at this point. And so the master plan, when you are in a town that's kind of fully developed or close to it, is focused on how you would approach review of redevelopment projects where someone's got something going on and they want to change it to something else. For example, the old Brookstone property came before the board in the last year, and they couldn't find an office use that would succeed on the parcel. So they proposed, I think, 80-ish apartments in the building. Something like that. Barbara, is that what you remember? 80 something, 90 something?
Yeah, very close to that. Changed a couple of times. So.
Yeah. It did. And so that's, the kind of review you see in a more developed town is somebody that's got a site where they want to either add to it or change what they've got going on in it. And you focus on thinking about redevelopment instead of development. That tends to look at like along the DW corridor, thinking about things that are focused more on pedestrians and walkability rather than parking and automobiles. And so you tend to see redevelopment, put the parking lot in the back or have less parking, be closer to the streets where the sidewalks are easier, shorter distances for people to walk from one thing to the next and that kind of thing. Of course, we don't control what people propose. We've just got sort of a set of guidelines that outline what the general expectations are for how that happens. I don't mean to bore you anymore about what it's like to be on a planning board or whatever, but I've always considered it a privilege to give back to the community and serve in any way I can. And I'm thankful to have been on the planning board since 2009 and the chair since 2010 or 11, I forget which.
Well, I'm hoping you're the new Nelson, so I expect to see you for a long time to come.
You know,
'cause-
for Nelson and I were joking the other day when a project was before us, the only two men alive that have signed plans around town are sitting right here. And
It is amazing.
the chairs have changed, but Nelson was the chair for I think 35 years, and I'm
Amazing.
about a dozen. So you know, two generations. There's only been two people doing it.
Yeah.
I do want to always be careful, and I talked to the planning board about this. I don't want to become such a fixture that nobody else is interested in stepping up when it's their time to do so. And if there's ever an opportunity where someone else wants to have that role, I'm certainly not looking to elbow anybody out. I'm glad to have Paul's support and other members of the board. So far, I'm still the favorite likely candidate.
There's
but,
reasons, some people, I get it.
You know, how do you guys turn over your chairs all the time? And I think you probably have some reason or decision to sort of make sure you turn it over a little bit. And I think that's a good thing too. I don't think that staying a chair forever is necessarily as effective as seeing some fresh ideas and some, you know, fresh people involved. And I also don't want applicants to think that somehow Bob is the key to developing in Merrimack. It's not. It's a board. So
Sure, no, absolutely. Well,
Lynn, do you want to add anything to the presentation?
I just want to say something.
Sorry.
What I'd like to do is just thank Barbara and also Tom for their representation of the council on the planning board. I know it takes a lot of time, and you need to know that it's much appreciated. So, and you're right, we've had discussions about the chair and things, and at the time I've basically verbalized my philosophy, because when I was chair for the 4 years, whatever it was, and I always felt that, and this isn't, by saying this, I'm not implying anything. This was just my feeling. I think that having movement within the chair and vice chair augments the philosophy that these positions are one of seven. They're not in charge, that our positions are no more important than any other positions. And fortunately, you've just been too good at your job. Nobody wants your job. But I think the advantage of moving up here provides that philosophy amongst us, that, and that's just the way I feel.
Yeah.
It's
No,
not everybody that feels
I
that way.
agree with that. That's a great point. And the only thing that I have that sort of comes close to switching it up so that you're reminded that you're just one vote is I say that in hearings all the time. When I present whatever I think to an applicant and you know, they may disagree, I say, but I'm just one vote.
That's right.
Talk to the rest of the folks here. And
Yeah.
that's one of the joys of the planning board. You know, a lot of times I see municipal boards where the board members themselves get heated over their view of what they think the outcome should be, and then afterwards, you know, the vote went 3-4 one way or the other way, and then everybody's grouchy about it or keeping score, or you sort of divide up. And the planning board has never once sort of kept score on a vote like that, and you know, been irritated or upset about what, you know, why one person didn't vote the way I thought they should or anything like that. And I certainly don't have any feeling like the board needs to be unanimous. If it's 4-3 and I'm on the 3 side of it, so what? It happens.
well, I think the difference as well, as far as the few chairs we've had for the planning board, is it's a heavy lift.
Yeah.
It's been a long time since I did what you are doing in as the
Yeah.
alternate. It's been years. And I remember how much it was, though. It was a totally heavy lift. So the chairman, there's a lot of people who don't mind filling in if you can't be there. This is my perception, but they don't mind you running the show. Yeah, and,
Especially when you're doing well.
and yeah, you're doing a good job. Nelson was wonderful all those years and still hasn't slowed down too much. Just in the lead position, I guess. But for me, I don't catch many of your meetings, but the only things, and I've been here for a little while, so I've seen great changes in town. You know, going from a pure blue collar community 52 years ago to, you know, a cross section of a great economic strata, you know, and so on. I don't know what words I want to use, but but the planning board can be hyper focused on issues that they're dealing with specifically, and I worry about things becoming, what do I want to say, a touchstone, things, where when we're talking densities of certain apartment complexes, that becomes what other people will be looking for. And so I don't want to get involved in those specific
precedents and
issues,
things like
but
that, yeah.
but those are things that I hope we contemplate, because I don't want that to become somebody else's project going, oh, well, wait a minute. And so, and also commercial industrial, we're relatively limited. I don't know what percent we are commercial industrial. And I know that there's an obvious housing shortage. Last year, you spoke to that directly in your comments to us. And and that hasn't changed. I heard very recently 1,000 homes for sale in the entire state. That's mind-boggling to me. But I know the change of shifting, like the Brookstone property, and I appreciate that. I know necessarily no problem for me with it, but I just the limited commercial industrial, it becomes a property tax burden in our calculations as things move forward. And so
Sure. So that is an interesting discussion to have, and for some of the projects that we have that are on a conditional use permit, the applicants produce a financial analysis of what they think their tax impact's going to be, and it's peer reviewed by a consultant that works for the town to decide. But generally speaking, the apartment buildings of the type that you see around, like at Gilbert Crossing and those sorts of things, they're usually 1 bedroom and studio with a few 2 bedrooms. Hardly ever you see a 3-bedroom apartment. And when you have that model of apartment, you end up being tax positive with the building all by itself, generally because there's very, very few students in an apartment building like that. I think in Gilbert Crossing there's like 9 or something like that in the whole development. And I think the formula predicted there'd be about twice that, but still even 18 isn't a huge number. And I may be off a little bit. It may be that it's changed over time since the last time I've heard it updated, but they tend to not have a whole bunch of children in them. And then, families start there and then, move out to bigger homes or bigger condominiums when they start to have kids. So the buildings themselves stay tax positive the whole way. And you got the data that's presented to the board that says so. And again, it's peer reviewed. So you get a look at it, and they look at fire calls and police calls and all that versus the tax money that comes in. And, smart people that are good at predicting those things put that together. It's presented to the board. We become somewhat experienced in it from seeing it a whole bunch of times, but it's brought to us by, people that make a science out of trying to predict this and how many cars come and go and all of that kind of thing. So they're usually pretty good at it. In terms of, fulfilling the state's needs, I don't think that we could fulfill all of the housing needs in the state, but we're really lucky to be in a town that people want to come to. There's a lot of towns around where nobody would want to build an apartment building because nobody wants to be there. And so, that's sort of a positive part of this. The jobs and the housing are what leads to, the housing and the apartments and things, what leads to the availability of a workforce, which is why companies would want to be here and set up and begin to do business here, because there's some place for their employees to either live or there's a population of employees that they could pull from. In terms of industrial land and commercial land, I don't know the commercial ratio, but Merrimack's actually got a really heavy supply of industrial land compared to a lot of other towns. That whole area to the south by Budweiser from Continental Boulevard through DW, even though there's some residential built in there, almost all of that is commercial land, where Fidelity is, where the Outlet Mall is, Elbit, whatever the latest version of BAE or whoever owns those buildings down there. All of that area, there's huge amounts of it, and most towns have very, very little of it. It's kind of a strange thing in terms of the trajectory of development in how towns grow. Industrial land is very hard to fill. There's just not that much demand for industrial land from people that want to build, a factory or, something like the things we see down south end town. And so you hang on to it thinking, boy, somebody will come along and they'll want to build something similar, not another brewery, but a factory that's got 500 employees in it. And you think, boy, wouldn't that be great? We'd have all these jobs and things like that. But it just doesn't seem to ever materialize. And so you get things that are okay to put in an industrial zone, like the Merrimack Premium Outlets or Fidelity or whatever, but they're not truly industrial. Then, housing kind of fills in some of the gaps and things. But Merrimack has always had a big chunk of industrial land kind of in that triangle between Continental Boulevard and DW and south of Exit 11. So it's quite a lot of it there.
Thank you, Bob. Does anybody have anything for Bob? Or any?
Well, let me just say, I appreciate the work that you do, and I personally think that the zoning board and the planning board get a lot of continuity out of having a consistent chair, because you do a great job of being able to guide, train, and lead the people. That if that shuffled around all the time, there would be a lack of consistency in the ability to present and query the applicants and stuff like that. So I very much appreciate the work that you do and that you're willing to continue to do that year to year. And thank you for that.
I'm glad to do it. I enjoy it. It's kind of fun to know what's the latest thing that's going on in town. Somebody says, "Oh, what are they building over there?" And you usually know the answer.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Because they asked me, I say, geez, I don't pay much attention. I should pay closer attention, I guess.
Although there's kind of a Facebook game where people go on there and they complain about Shaw's holding the lease for the old Merrimack 360, and we need a Dave and Buster's, and they should have a Cheesecake Factory, and
And the one was going into Zions, all that.
Yeah, people just joke about it now. It'll be another Dunkin' Donuts and whatever. But
Mexican restaurant.
yeah, another Mexican
Oh,
restaurant.
I did go to that groundbreaking with Paul of the 325,000 square foot warehouse. It was very impressive being on that property, on that site. It's amazing what's been going on over the past few months. So,
That's gonna be fast too, isn't it?
yes.
Warehouses are
Yeah.
There's been a lot of growth in our restaurants and things like that with Merrimack 360 kind of redeveloping. I think there's 4 restaurants in that plaza, and a few others that have come around town. And in terms of, you kind of be surprised. I've lost count for how many restaurants we have, but if you count the fast food restaurants and things, it's probably 25 or 30 restaurants in town. Most people look around and say, "Oh, we got 2." Like, well, there's a bunch. So you just got to look for them. But it's kind of a nice part of town is that if you want to go out to eat, you got some choices. Some of them are, really great, and some of them are, faster and cheaper, and that's what you're looking for. So
Yeah.
it all comes together with the development. People got to have a place to live, then they have a place to work, then they have a place to eat, then they want some grocery stores, and then parks and the other stuff that comes with it. So.
Great. Hey, Andy?
I think last year we talked a little bit about mixed use properties, and that, a lot of projects start out as mixed use, and by the time they're done, there's not much mixed use. Have we seen a change in that, or is that still the trend that they start out as mixed use and kind of morph and change as they go along to less commercial, more residential?
Yeah, so there's pressure on developers to have more residential and less commercial because that's the demand. You can fill up the apartments. Apartments will be rented before they open the day one. And so that's certainly what the developer wants to do. And our approach to mixed use development has evolved a little bit over the years where, I don't know, a generation ago, the commercial part of the mixed use was really necessary to make the economics work. And the tax analysis wasn't tax positive until you had the commercial built in there. And over time, because residential is more expensive to build and it's more valuable property, that tax analysis is kind of shifted where they become tax positive with more of the residential. And so it becomes something where the planning board says, well, do we need to push people to do commercial when it's tax positive with just the residential piece? Why do we want it to be mixed? And that question, the answer to that's changed over time. I think also our approach to mixed use development used to be reserved for 50-acre parcels and bigger. So things like where the outlet mall is, Gilbert Crossing has got a parcel that size. The one at the south end of town that I can never remember the name of is actually, it got a variance. It's a 35-acre parcel, but it got a variance to be that. So when you do mixed use on a big parcel, it looks a lot like the outlet mall where you've got, some commercial and retail and some apartments or maybe a hotel. at times with Gilbert Crossing and the one towards the Nashville border, we were very minimalistic in terms of what we were requiring from the commercial. And Gilbert Crossing is doing its commercial right in front of St. Gobain now, and that's sort of satisfies its requirement. The storage units, the one in the south end of town, kind of satisfied their commercial. And we were sort of telling applicants, just give me some commercial. Just any amount of commercial will be enough, and it'll be mixed. And at the outlet mall, there's a lot more pressure to be a good bit more balanced. And although I think we all would like more commercial there than the applicant proposes, they've got about 100,000 square feet of commercial there, not counting the hotel, with some restaurants and some office and some retail that they plan to do there. So there is a good amount of commercial there. It's just at one point that poor applicant kind of suffers from the fact that they proposed at one point 5 years ago a fabulous proposal that they couldn't economically make work, and everybody fell in love with it. And so everything that they do now is judged against that really spectacular thing. And as a planning board, that's one of the challenges, is you sort of recognize that you can't hold an applicant to a standard to say, well, you once said something better, so I'm going to make you stick with that. It's, does the thing you propose meet my regulations? And that's how you do it. So
Yeah, I mean, I hear the argument that, residential apartments are tax positive, right? But if you extrapolate that out, who wants to go to a community that is nothing but apartments, right? So there's some value in that mixed use, even if it isn't necessarily tax positive. And as I visit different communities, I'm always drawn to those areas where it's mixed use. And it's such a nice environment where you see apartments close to restaurants, and people could walk out of their apartments, and they don't have to leave their little community, that they have what they need right there. And I think that's what draws people to a community. And so even though we say apartments are tax positive, I don't know always whether it's a dollar and cents thing. It's about building that community to me. And I just see those areas, and I keep thinking to myself, it'd be nice if Merrimack had, Bedford's a great example. They've got that commercial area, and they're starting to build apartments in there. And I had conversation with someone the other day, and how did they build all of their commercial first before they built their first apartment building? And somehow they made the economics work, right?
yeah.
But yet we hear the opposite argument is, I can't build a commercial, I need the residential first. And then it's, well, I need more residential. And it's hard to continue to listen to that argument. And you also hear the feedback of the community. And I think the general voice of the community is kind of done with the apartments.
Yeah,
Even though it is a
definitely-
positive tax benefit.
You definitely hear that. Now, some of the apartments, like the one behind Merrimack 360, the kind of up on the hill close to the turnpike, is on a mixed use development, and the Eastridge apartment condos are part of the old development that became Merrimack 360 from its original approval in the 70s. So that's a mixed use site, and it's a good example of what you're talking about, where somebody can walk down from their apartment and go to Hayward's to get some ice cream, or go to the bank, or go to the store. But commercial development or retail developments really evolved from selling products and having stores that retailed a thing, and you loaded up a cart and you walked out with it, to experiences. And if you look at Merrimack 360, the Dollar General store and the beer store are the only retailers that are in there. Everything else is either a restaurant, a hair salon, the trampolines, the gym, the bank. There are places that you have to go. And no matter how the economy evolves, you can't do a trampoline park online, right? You can't go to the gym online. And so that's what retail, that's the valuable tenant to have now, is someone that will survive the push to Amazon and the rest of that by having experiences that you have to come to. You can't get any Hayward's ice cream any other way than going over to Hayward's and getting some. And so communities are competing for that, and developers are competing for that. And the Merrimack 360 developer knocked it out of the park and found a whole bunch of them, and a couple of retailers to put a little bit of retail there. But another developer either looks at it and says, well, I missed the ball. Those great opportunities with Altitude and Planet Fitness got ahead of me, and I missed them, and they went there and not where I am. or they can't find anymore, and they've tried, the traditional stores, big boxes and grocery stores, and they're struggling to find them, or they eventually do find them and fill those places. Even the plaza at Exit 11 has got a whole lot more restaurants in it than the Shaw's is kind of the retailer, and almost everything else in there is, again, it's an experience. The liquor store, it's one you're always going to go there. So, but a whole bunch of different restaurants that are in there, and that sort of thing. So, but eventually the potential candidates to rent that space are they found their place and they're not looking anymore. So it can be tough to figure out how to fill it up. In terms of the community and a sense of we've had enough apartments, we want to see a focus somewhere else. The master plan opportunity is where all that kind of goals and objectives are laid out, and that will shape the next 10 years or so of how we approach developments. Generally speaking, though, as we talked about before, I think, Tom, you were in the middle chair last time I was here. The applicants come forward with what they think is best for their property. We don't get to tell them, don't do that, build this, because I'd like a skate park better than I'd like another gas station. We don't have that level of control over them.
No, but it's the quick switch for me. I always think of Society Hill. They had that parcel in the front there, and they tried, for 25 years, 30 years maybe even, and couldn't do anything with it. So I don't know what's going on now. The other one was the complex just north of that. Now, on the other side, it goes down Crossroads Path, yes, and that they made apartments up in the front when I don't think originally that was planned for, but they did it 25 years later. It wasn't 3 years later. Listen, I have to change densities. I have to come up with a whole new proposal. And so you've got somebody, a developer of 360, who was brilliant, as you've suggested, bringing in the tenants that he or she has there. And other people don't even give that the shot. They just are going to the refill of more apartments. And honestly, I really don't have a problem with the apartments, because I agree with the human loading in these places. It's not many children, because if you can afford those apartments and you're having a family, you're more likely to go out and buy a home. So I can see why those numbers stay low. Then the traffic, it's accommodating. It's busy all over the state at rush hour anyhow, so it's nothing unique, but it flows. It still works. So I don't know. I'm babbling now. So it's always difficulties in trying to find a balance, but
yeah, they're always interesting proposals the planning board gets to tackle, and these are the kinds of conversations the planning board would have about a particular proposal when it's in front of you. Another one is the 2 workforce housing buildings that are in that complex where Jade Dragon and Tractor Supply is, and sort of it's about all the apartment you could fit on that parcel is what they're proposing. But if you're talking about things that are walkable for folks, that's what mixed use looks like. I can walk to a restaurant. I can walk to this couple of stores that are in there. And when they measure whether a community is walkable, there's like a list of 5 or 6 different things that you need: a pharmacy, and a dry cleaner, you need a park, a library, you need some connection to public transportation if you can find one. I forget what else is sort of on that list. A grocery store is obviously going to be on that list that you got to be able to walk to if the community is going to be totally walkable. And Manhattan is totally walkable, but nobody wants to build that here, and thank goodness we don't want that here. But we'll never be that level of walkable. But something like Merrimack 360 or those a couple of apartment buildings by Tractor Supply are probably as walkable as any place else that we will see in our community. And it's a bit of a change in generations, where sort of the younger generation wants to be in that walkable community where they don't have to mow the lawn and they don't have to do a lot of other things to take care of property. And we've also got a different generation that wants to live where I live, where they got an acre lot and I can mow the grass, and every Saturday I'm over at the dump because I've cut down some trees and I got to put all the branches over in the thing, and that's my style. And the community's got to have a balance of all of those things. We've really got this kind of unique Route 3 corridor with the turnpike kind of separating the apartments and commercial and all of those things for the most part from traditional subdivisions with 1 or 2 acre lots, or a few other. There's a few condos on the west side of the turnpike, but most of it's on the east side. And Can I have two personalities in town?
Yeah.
Finding a little bit of something for everybody is not just a matter of different housing styles, but it's also different income points. And so, you know, teacher that will teach at our school and make, I don't know what teachers make this year, but or this time, but there's a level of housing that they can afford. And the last thing you want is to have the people who you need to work in your police department, your fire department, your schools not be able to afford to live in your town because you've said all of our houses are going to be $700,000, you know, McMansions on 2-acre lots. So it's a puzzle. The applicants generally are following the economics that they think shows the demand, and we can test them on it a little bit and ask them questions and things, but we don't really get to say, you know, forget what you have in mind. Let me tell you what I think you should do. So.
Right.
As long as we stick to our plans and don't go 8x the density of Manchester or Nashua or something like that, I'm agreeing with what you're saying.
Anything further? Thanks, Paul.
Thank
Appreciate
you all for
everything
the
you
chance
guys
to
did.
be
Thank
here.
you, Lynn.
Is there anything like when I come next year you'd like to make sure I mention or talk about or hear about that you're interested in, or is it just sort of a normal update and this is exactly what you wanted? I mean, we probably lasted longer than you wanted me to, but
It was part of, it was mostly our
We did
fault.
most of the talking.
If we hadn't asked questions, it wouldn't have lasted very long at all.
No, I mean, unless anybody can think of anything in particular, I think the general overall update of what we've seen, and I think you did that for us tonight. So
thank you for that. It's maybe this is sort of a sarcastic way of thinking about it, but as far as the planning board goes, sometimes you have big projects and everybody's energized by it and they want to come and tell you about what they think. But more often than not, if you can be boring and nobody really wants to come out and see what you're doing, it probably means that you're hitting the right spot, and it's okay. Just be boring.
We feel the same way.
You can see our audience.
Just be boring. Yeah.
we remember the day when people would tune in for the entertainment, and they're bored now. So you're right; it's a good thing.
Yeah, it's okay. Good government's boring government. Thank you all, and have a good night.
Thank you.
Thank
You
you.
too.
And thanks to your team.
Thanks, Bob.
All righty. Item number 3 under new business is council to receive a review of the key financial information for the quarter ending March 31st. Seems like we did this a month ago.
Yeah.
Okay.
No,
It does seem like.
Yes. Yeah, grab.
Go to one
You're
of
all
the
set,
mics.
Tom.
Everybody knows that there's, or at least a lot of people know that there's an electronics recycling event coming up. Someone in town has removed, they haven't blown over, but somebody has physically removed at least 13 out of 16 signs in the north and west end of town. These are not your typical campaign signs with these lightweight metal things. These have bars in them that have been pounded into the ground. Somebody is making a concerted effort to get rid of these. If you are the one that has done this, please return them. This is a huge benefit to this town. The money that goes in here stays in this town. You are stealing from your neighbors. Return those signs. Thank you.
Thanks, Lynn.
Thank you, Lynn.
It doesn't make any sense.
No.
Or if you know who is, drop a dime.
I'll go get them.
Thank you. Thanks, Tom.
All right, good evening.
Good evening.
Does seem like we just did this, but it is time to review the numbers for the of the town's financial results through the first 3 quarters of our fiscal year, which is the period from July of 2022 through March of 2023. So I'm pleased to report that the town's financial position remains very healthy. You'll hear a couple of recurring themes that we've talked about in prior quarters this year, and that have really carried forward now for probably a couple of years at least. Mainly being that we continue to see challenges with filling open positions in town. We've had a number of positions remain vacant for extended periods. And there are financial ramifications of that. You're going to see that we've had to backfill a lot of the open positions with overtime. But overall, things are good. In fact, while there are some issues with that situation, mainly being understaffed, having to kind of make do with less, and yet still provide the level of services that people expect, it does make the financial numbers look pretty good. But obviously at some other cost. So to get into it, typically in the third quarter, we take a look at our energy consumption numbers through those first 9 months of the fiscal year, starting with electricity. Just kind of looking to see if there's any unusual trends or spikes or things that look like they could be items of concern. We don't really have that. If you look at the history of our electric consumption, if you go back 10 years or so ago, we were running at rates of about 3.5 million kilowatts for the first 9 months of the fiscal year, and now we're down in 22-23 at just under 2.6 million kilowatts. The majority of our electricity usage, actually probably 65 to 70% of what we use in the town, is used at the wastewater transfer facility. So the bars below look at all of the areas other than the wastewater transfer facility, because if we put that on there, it would kind of dwarf everything else. But pretty consistently in all our departments, we've seen a steady decline in electricity usage over the past decade as we've done some projects to make our usage a little more efficient. We have seen those numbers go down. So, nothing really to note here other than that. There's a couple of exceptions to that. The Parks and Rec usage is up, but our Parks and Rec department is a lot more active than it was a decade ago. We have a lot more going on, a lot more programs, a lot more use of the facilities during the winter months, where a lot of those facilities were kind of dormant and unused if you go back a number of years. So
Tom, Barbara, do you have some?
Yeah. So where in these categories is the wastewater treatment facility stuck? You say they're
actually
increased, but they're not listed separately. So where are they in this overall pattern here?
they're not in any of the bars down below.
Okay.
They are in those total numbers, the total usage numbers that are written in the upper left-hand corner.
Okay. So then what's the increase going on in buildings and grounds?
I think.
I can answer that.
Okay.
With COVID, we kept the fans on in all our heating units. And when you keep a fan on in a air handler, it uses a lot more electricity. So we're going to start going back to auto fans. So when they come on, but that's really one of the big major problems is that why it went up is because all the we have 6 units in my other building, and and the fans are on 24/7, blowing air. Because during COVID, they said, move the air through, filter the air through. And now that we're getting out of COVID, we're gonna go back to what it was before, where they would come on auto when the units come on.
Oh, okay, because even during COVID, it isn't as high as it is now.
Yeah, well, they're running 24/7 now.
Thank you.
Okay. We also take a look at our natural gas usage, measured in therms. A fairly similar story here, in that 60 to 70% of our natural gas usage is at the wastewater transfer facility. But if you look, and the numbers there have actually increased as their compost activity has increased dramatically over the last several years, and they use a lot of energy as part of that process. In the other departments in town, natural gas usage is pretty much down across the board compared to prior years. We did have a fairly mild winter, and I think that is generally why we see those numbers the way that they're showing up. Getting into the appropriation side of the budget, or the expenditure side of the budget, going through some of the major expenses that the town has. Health insurance is the first one that we look at here. You can see that the health insurance numbers are down from prior years through the first 9 months. For the fiscal 22-23 year, we've got a budget of almost $3.4 million. Through the first 9 months, we spent $2.2 million. So we've spent 65% of our budget on health insurance through the first 3 quarters of the year. So obviously we're running favorably from that perspective. And again, the primary reason being we've had unfilled positions where we haven't had people on the health insurance rolls for extended period of time, and there is a savings that we're realizing as a result of that. Just doing a simple annualization of the 9-month numbers, projecting out for the full year, looks like we'll have a little over $400,000 of unspent appropriations just in the health insurance category itself.
But it's important to understand that most of that, if not all that savings, is from those open positions, right? I mean, if we
Correct. We knew what the rates were going to be. You
open.
know, there's sometimes you could get a difference in the mix of people on family plans versus single, but we're not really seeing that. The rates that we've projected are pretty much right on the savings as a result of the fact that we've had openings.
We've had 10 positions open for most of the year between highway and police. There alone is about a $200,000 savings just in those 10 positions. And mix in, we had positions in DPW admin for a while. We have a position down there. Actually, we've had 11 positions open for the year. So, you're looking at $220,000 worth of savings just for those positions. It isn't for lack of trying to fill these positions. It's trying to get the right person in for the job. We want people who can do the job and not somebody who can breathe, so to speak. And I know that sounds crude and rude, but, we're not settling. We're trying to get the right people in to do the jobs. So that's part of this health insurance savings, and you'll see it in the salary savings, and you'll see it again in other things. The big point is when you have that many openings, certain things are not being done. And I'm trying to get a list together for the retreat of what is not being done. Because we're going to have to try to get those things done, and that means outsourcing it, which could mean more expense. So that's what we're working on, looking at for the retreat.
Yeah, and I wanted to stress that because I know when we budget, people are looking at our budgets and they're saying, how come you can be $500,000 over budget on something like this? And it's because we have to plan for all the positions that are in town to be filled. And we work real hard to try and get things done when we don't have those positions filled and there's money left over, which then we use it to reduce taxes in the following year frequently if our budget surplus gets high enough. So it's not like it's money that never comes back to the people. We do the best we can in budget. Thank you.
New Hampshire retirement contributions are another significant cost that's part of the town's operating budget. Through the first 3 quarters of the fiscal year, we've incurred just over $2.5 million in retirement contributions versus our annual budget number of $3.3 million. So we're right at 75% of the budget through those 9 months. Reason why the picture is not quite the same as what we see on health insurance is that we talked about having to backfill those open positions with overtime, which we'll get to in a second. But we do pay New Hampshire retirement. It's a set percentage on wages, whether they're regular wages or overtime wages. So because of the situation that we find ourselves in, we're paying that set percentage on the higher time and a half overtime wages, which skews the expenditure numbers up, but we're still in good shape with regard to that particular expense component. Overtime. The bars are a little tough to navigate here, partly because fire and police overtime is significantly greater than overtime in these other departments. But I can run through some of the numbers for you. Overall, our overtime budget for the year is a little over $1.2 million. That's for the general fund departments, and we have exceeded that slightly through the 9 months of the fiscal year. We're $25,000 over budget in total already through those 9 months. So we'll certainly be more than that again through the quarter. In particular, police is running at 120% of their budget just through the 9 months. Fire is at 89% of their budget for the first 3 quarters. The communications department is at a smaller number, but they're at 182% of their budgeted overtime for the year. Highways at 107%, solid waste at 130%. Those are the big numbers, and those are all departments where we have had openings, either unfilled positions, or we've had people out on disability or workers' comp, and the overtime has been required to maintain the service levels. So I did note here, based on that $1.2 million annual budget number, overall, we're at 102% through 9 months. If you annualize that out, you're looking at an estimated annual overage just for overtime of $478,000 for the year. So that kind of absorbs our health insurance savings, but
Yep.
there's more to see as we go on. This chart just kind of strips out fire, so they can get a little bit better sense of what's going on in the other departments, but it's really similar to what what we've already talked about.
In highway, we were doing great, and then we got hit with those storms at the end of the season. And we got hit with two or
Couple
three of them.
Long event.
together.
Right together. Every week, it was like, boom, another storm, boom, another storm. So that's why highway's over. They really do not have a lot of overtime in the fourth quarter unless we get hit with a major flood or a water event. Like I said, police is running over because of those openings. Still need to patrol the streets. So they're putting patrolmen on the ground. Communications, we've had an opening off and on for most of the year. They'll need somebody dispatching. And solid waste, we've had some illness in the department that we are been covering with overtime. And like we've talked about in years past, when somebody works a Saturday at solid waste, it's 100% of overtime. So that's why their overtime number is a little skewed this year. And the fire department is doing well, but they've also run into some situations where vacancies or worker or people out on illnesses that we've covered the full. In fire, we are still keeping to what the council said when they got those positions, that we will be staffed at the number per shift, and we've been keeping with that, and they've been staffed per shift. One of the reasons why is because of the savings that we'll see in a minute on their personnel service side, dollar wise. So, but we take this into account with, like we said, it seems like, oh, the health insurance is more, this is less, this is more, and it balances out. We look at all the benefits to people, and when we look at it, it's overtime, it's personal service, it's everything. When we look at the dollars, and like I said before, and not to sound like a broken record, is we're trying to get the people in here. And if we had the people in here, overtime might be lower. But the next slide, when he goes to personal service numbers, oh, you got one more. But when you go to personal service numbers, you'll see that those numbers, there's a savings there. So that it's quasi shift of this balancing scale.
All right, so I do want to look at the kind of the flip side of that overtime situation. So I skipped ahead a slide because my slides were out of order. So looking at what we've spent in just regular wages, not overtime, through those first 9 months. And if you go department by department and compare the annual budget to our 9 months worth of expenditures, you know, and then look at what percent of the budget remains, you would expect we would be, you know, at the 25% level for budget remaining. And you can see in almost every department, we exceed that 25% remaining figure. And in some cases, we exceed it fairly significantly. And again, this is because of those open positions that I keep coming back to. But if you look at where that puts us and you project out the annualized savings, if we ran at that same rate through the last quarter of the year, where we'd be at, you're looking at in the general fund in total being $1.4 million under budget effectively for the year. Now, we will fill some of the, and have filled some of those positions in that final quarter. So that number is probably a little overstated, but there's some significant savings here that will be realized through the full fiscal year.
Right. Yes, there will be some savings. The other thing too is that some of the steps come into play in some of our departments, such as fire and police, in the fourth quarter. So those aren't accounted for the first 9 months. So some of those will be coming through as well. But there are some significant savings in personnel services as well.
Can we go back to the fire there for just a second?
Yep.
So I want to make sure I understood what you were saying, Paul. When we increased the fire department, we said we were going to staff at that level as long as we didn't exceed the overtime budget. What you're saying is we are exceeding the overtime budget, but not by more than what we are saving with the wages
Right.
because we're lack of personnel down there.
Correct. And what I do is I call it unexpected vacancies. Somebody who's out on
Yep.
workers' comp, somebody's out on short-term disability. The fire department can't,
They can't absorb that in their plan
So I
budget.
take that
Yeah.
out as part of their overtime allotment.
Yep.
And I also looked, we've had some vacancies. We had a lieutenant position open. So there was overtime in that position. We have a firefighter right now vacancy for the last, month or so. So we take that all into account as their overtime to keep them functioning. And I balance their personal service dollars versus where they're going to be with their overtime dollars and make sure they're there. Once those numbers flip and they're going to spend more money, then we'd have to make decisions.
Okay, thank you.
Let me rephrase that. We're not at that level now, and we don't believe we'll be at that level by June 30th. But it all depends on the next 6 weeks.
Okay, so backing up to the slide I skipped, this kind of looks at where the departments stand overall, total appropriations in the budget versus year-to-date expenditures for the first 9 months. The difference between those two is the balance remaining in the budget before we consider encumbrances. Encumbrances are basically items that the town has contracted for already but relate to future time periods. So this is effectively fourth quarter spending that we've already committed to but haven't paid for yet. So that kind of skews the numbers. But even with those encumbrances factored in almost all departments, we've got at least 25% of our budget remaining for the final quarter of the year. And in the cases where it's less than 25%, it is due to those encumbrance numbers that have been factored in departments like highway and solid waste, even the parks and recreation, because the numbers are smaller. That's really skewed by that encumbrance number, as is the case with buildings and grounds. Welfare is a little bit of a different situation, in just that it's a fairly small department, and a number of the expenses there, the contributions that we make to the health services organizations that support our town, our community, and our welfare recipients are paid upfront in the first quarter, actually, of the fiscal year. So that one always kind of runs ahead, but I don't see any issues there. Taking a look at revenues, which obviously also affect the amount that the town needs to raise in property taxes. We continue to be in good shape on the revenue front as well. Auto registrations are our most significant non-property tax revenue, and it's something we've been monitoring closely because of what's going on, or what has been going on in the automotive industry in terms of availability of vehicles and whatnot. But as you can see, for the auto registrations, we've got an annual budget of $5.6 million. We've taken in through the first 9 months $4.3 million, which puts us at 70% of the budget, which is pretty much right on track with where we had hoped to be, and we're looking good in terms of that number. I put solid waste revenues on here for the first time, just because I think it's worth noting what's going on there. You can see we're running at 136% of our budgeted revenues through the first 9 months of the year. There was a rate increase back in February of 2022 to our commercial tipping fees for trash and construction and demolition. But those rates only went up, I think it was 10% for trash and maybe 20% for construction and demolition, or a little less than 20%. But obviously the revenues are up significantly more than that. So there has been a significant increase in the volumes of what they're dealing with at the transfer station, which is something we need to, I think, maybe take a closer look at and consider whether that facility is adequately staffed for the amount of activity that they have going on there now, and to see whether we want to make any changes in our rate policies. Building permits is something else that we typically look at. We are at 105% of our budget through the first 9 months, so we're certainly going to be good there. And the number I love to talk about most is interest income, because it's finally fun to try and earn some interest and make some money on the town's cash reserves. We're at 189% of our budgeted figure. We had an annual budget of $439,000, and through the first 9 months, we're at $831,000. So that'll be a significant benefit to the bottom line, I guess, as it were, by the time we're all said and done. Let's see. I think that was all I had there. This is just taking out auto registrations so you can get a little bit clearer view of how the other revenue items compare to prior years. And that was all I had, but I'd be happy to answer any more questions if you have them.
So on solid waste, we have higher income. Are we seeing a comparable expense that we're having to haul away more trash, or more time on the road hauling trash, or?
Yes, most of the expense line items in the solid waste department are running higher as well, both for our contracted fees to dispose of the trash and the recycling, as well as that it's creating some of the necessity for overtime in that department as well.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
What I'd like to state is that we are going to have money moving forward into the fund balance this year. I can guarantee you. With the revenues the way they are with interest, solid waste revenues, they're going to be moving forward. That's an automatic drop into the fund balance. Whatever we get for revenue goes into fund balance. On the appropriation side, we are going to have some money moving forward in the appropriation side too, because we had $700,000 set aside for the 800 system, megahertz system for police and fire, and we got a grant. We did have to spend some money out of that grant, out of the $700,000, but a good portion of that would also be dropping to the bottom line and moving into fund balance. In fiscal year 23-24, which was just voted on, we used a significant amount of that fund balance.
Yeah.
And that's why I felt comfortable proposing the $1.4 million for the gas station and the other money coming out for tax relief of almost $2.4 million. Because I knew that we were going to have money this year because of the savings and positions and the revenues where they were coming and things of that sort. So the money, for Councilor Koenig's point, the money does go back to the people. We're not putting it in our war chest and just leaving it there. It goes back in tax relief. I think we've been doing $1 million worth of tax relief, just straight tax relief out of fund balance over the last couple of years. And it's a balancing act. When I was finance director, how many times did I come in front of you and say, I hope the interest rates turn around this year?
Yeah.
I hope the interest rates turn around this year.
At what price?
You know, so, they're coming there. The other thing that I do, a lot of as you can see, we've come in front of you a lot of times with capital reserve purchases. And we said we budgeted $300,000 for XYZ, and it's coming in at 335. The cost of some of this items and the equipment that we're buying is higher than the budget as well. So there's pluses and minuses, but we are in good fiscal shape, and there will be money going into the fund balance this year from appropriations and revenues. Great.
Barbara, sorry about that.
Yeah, so getting back to Tom, your comment about solid waste, it sounds like based on the numbers, we're seeing more solid waste crossing, the threshold, if you will. Probably not only construction and demo, but also probably recyclables, et cetera. But yet we're not fully staffed, right? We have an open position. So it remains to be seen if we need to add additional positions once that position is filled.
That is correct. That's a fair statement.
Being looked at?
That's a fair statement, and to look at where our increases are. Are they, with gas prices and diesel prices being the way they are too, some of the local haulers are not hauling up to the Bow area. They rather haul in Merrimack and dump because the savings there. Even though our tipping rate might be a little bit higher than what's up there, it's the savings because of the gas prices and diesel prices, I should say. So some of them, that's where we're seeing some of our extra tonnage coming in from. Recycling, it baffles me. Over the last 5 to 7 years, we could put a pin in around 1,500 tons. It does. It goes a little lower, a little higher, a little lower, a little higher. It's right around the 1,500 tons. It just baffles me that every year we're usually right in that area. But there are some, we're looking at the tonnage, we're looking at our expenses for what we're shipping out to our facilities, both in those. The big thing is that we got to look at the department as a whole and see where we are. Right now, like I said, we're down a position right now because of illness. So we got to figure out if we get that person back in, does that satisfy or do we need? And that's a discussion that Don will be having as well as with Chris, as well as with myself, to say, what are the needs of your department, during budget season? To come back that way and say, okay, what are the needs of your department? When she brings back a budget for 2024-25 season, fiscal year. So we are keeping our eye on a lot of different things out there and our fingers on the pulse of a lot of different things, and anything can happen. I was on a conference call, and I don't want to belabor this, but I was on a conference call on Tuesday with Senator Shaheen about debt limits and the crisis that's going on in Washington and how will that affect the area, and nobody knows. Nobody knows what's going to happen. My gut tells me we're not going to go into default. My gut tells me that they'll come up with some kind of deal over the next several days, and they'll hit their deadlines, but there's a lot of unknowns. And when there's unknowns, things shift.
Stock market doesn't like unknowns.
Yeah, stock and the bonds don't like unknowns, and we're in secured money, and that's one other thing I want to talk about with the people is that every dollar that the town of Merrimack has invested, that we have invested in our banks, it's 100% secured, whether through FDIC or third-party sureties. So all our money is secured. So if a local bank fails and we had money in there, we're going to get our money. So we do, and it collateralized. 100% of our money is collateralized. So there are a bunch of things that we're looking at. There's a bunch of things in the economy. The other thing is just heard the other day, New Hampshire's unemployment is what, 2%? And it's even less in southern New Hampshire. So we're all fighting for the same positions. All municipalities are fighting for the same positions. So, it's a tough labor market right now. So we have to look at doing things differently in the future. And we might be coming to the council where we're going to be outsourcing some things that we normally used to do because we can't get the bodies to do it. So, but don't want to doom and gloom. We're in good financial shape. We have money, and we're keeping our eye on a lot of these different things.
Very good. Any more comments, questions? Thank you, Tom. We
Thank
really
you.
appreciate it. Next, item number 4 under new business. Council to consider the disposal of tax deeded properties pursuant to RSA 80:42 and 80:88 through 90 and chapter 66 of the Merrimack Town Code. Council has the opportunity to either keep or get rid of these properties, and I don't know, Paul, if you want to speak to it all?
Yeah, right now, during the tax deeding process, the town of Merrimack is in possession of 3 tax deeds. And the council has to decide whether or not they want to keep those properties or sell those properties. And that's what we're really looking at there. There is information for the public that we brought up and put on the table. I see everybody rushing to it. But the three tax deeded properties, and we have RSAs that we have to follow. If the council does want to sell these properties, we have to give notice that the property is for sale. And then the individuals have 90 days to buy back the property.
They have to,
Let us know within 30. But
30
they-
days.
They have 90 days to purchase it back. After that. And just looking for the will of the council on those 3 properties.
What's the pleasure of the council?
Make a motion.
And we're going to do them individually. Ed,
Move to dispose of the tax deeded property at tax map 4C lot 286-J15 immediately and prior to the end of the 3 years by way of public auction per Town Code Chapter 66, Article 1, with proper notice given to the prior owners and all mortgage and lien holders, and further to proceed with ejectment action against anyone presently occupied in the property.
Second.
motion by Andy, seconded by Barbara. Any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Aye. Abstained? 611 with 511. My math, I just did so many numbers up here. With Finley voting in the negative and Tom Koenig is an abstention. It's the pleasure on the second parcel.
Like to make a motion? Move to dispose of the tax deeded property at tax map 6D lot 282 immediately and prior to the end of the 3 years by way of public auction per Town Code, Chapter 66, Article 1, and with proper notice given to the prior owners and all mortgage and lien holders, and further to proceed with an ejectment action against anyone presently occupying the property.
I'll second.
Motion by Andy, seconded by Mackenzie. Any further discussion on that motion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Aye. Abstain? Aye. 511 with I'm voting in the negative, Tom Koenig voting abstention. And the third parcel?
I'll make another motion. Move to dispose of the tax deeded property at tax map 6D-1 lot 117 immediately and prior to the end of the 3 years by way of public auction per Town Code Chapter 66, Article 1, with proper notice given to the prior owners and all mortgage and lien holders, and further to proceed with ejectment action against anyone presently occupying the property.
Motion by Andy. Seconded by Mackenzie. Any further discussion on the motion? I'll call the question. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, aye, and abstain.
Aye.
5-1-1 with, I'm voting an A, with Tom's voting abstention. All right, we'll be moving on, unless there's any further conversation. Next on the agenda, May, minutes, it's town council minutes of May 11th, 2023.
I move to pass the minutes of Thursday, May 11th, 2023, with the following suggested change. And I'll ask the opinion of the group. Page 2, at the very end, there is discussion about when the Merrimack TV won the national award, there was nothing in there stating that the town council had congratulated them. So what I'm suggesting is we summarize the statement by congratulations provided by town councilors to the Merrimack TV staff for this momentous achievement. So I would just like to recommend just a statement. Do you want me to reread it, Paul?
No, just give it to me after.
Yeah, I will be happy to provide it to you.
There's something, I think on the first page.
Yes.
You have that, it appears to be missing something, because it speaks to, this award displays Merrimack TV's commitment to community media, fostering community partnerships, but there's nothing in the
Right, it
beginning.
needs a lead-in statement. It almost looks like it's in the wrong place,
Right.
except that I know Paul talked about, and what he said was a lot more than that.
We'll look at what was said.
Yeah. Oh, who made the motion?
I made the
Who
motion
made the motion?
with that one correction. And I need a second.
Second.
Oh, you did have one mapper, okay.
I gave you a second.
Sorry, I didn't hear it.
I didn't know that, and she told it right in my ear, so. All right, so I had a motion.
I had another question, if I can. On page 2, line 10, when Bill Boyd is talking about the county is experiencing a nursing shortage, was it a nursing shortage or was it a shortage of room in the nursing home?
Nursing shortage.
shortage.
Yeah. They have
Okay.
empty rooms, I
Yeah,
think is what
yeah.
it said, actually,
Oh,
Because they didn't have.
because they didn't have the
staff.
staff.
well, I thought he was saying they had to put them somewhere else because they didn't have
No, they're
space.
using temp nurses right now, agency nurses,
Oh,
to fill the void.
okay, thanks.
Which is twice as
Never mind.
Yeah. Anything further on the minutes? All right, on a motion by Nancy Harrington and a second on Barbara. Call the question on the minutes. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed or abstained? 0-0. Comments from the press? Seeing none. Comments from the public? Seeing none. Comments from the council? Seeing none.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, Barbara.
Just want to remind everybody that Monday is Memorial Day, and the VFW this year is sponsoring a parade that will start at 10:30 from the Rite Aid parking lot and will end at Last Rest Cemetery for the usual services that will take place there. Following that, at approximately 1 p.m. over at the VFW, they will have a short memorial ceremony outside by the wall. There are no new additions to the wall this time, but we still will do a memorial.
Thank you for the reminder.
Okay.
All right. Seeing no other comments?
Move to adjourn.
By Andy, second by Tom Koenig. Any discussion on that motion? I don't know if you discussed it. All those in favor of adjournment signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed or abstained? 7-0-0. Thank you, everybody.